Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA, and if you thought you knew everything about rare dimes, today's story is going to prove you wrong. Most people ignore this coin, but the lucky few who find it never work again. We're talking about the 1976 Roosevelt dime, a coin struck during America's bicentennial year, a coin that looks, on the surface, like nothing more than a completely unremarkable piece of pocket change, worn, dull, easily overlooked. But hidden among the millions upon millions struck at the Denver Mint that year, numismatic experts believe one specimen exists that has been valued at an almost incomprehensible $62 million. $62 million, for a coin that could be sitting in your junk drawer right now without you ever knowing it. And before we dive into exactly why this coin commands such an extraordinary valuation, I want you to stay with us, because today we've got two more coins waiting in the wings, and each one gets more shocking than the last. So don't touch that dial, Reveal Penny USA is just getting started. Let's set the stage. 1976 was an extraordinary year for American coinage, unlike almost any other in modern history. The entire country was gearing up to celebrate its 200th birthday, and the United States Mint was under enormous pressure to produce specially designed bicentennial coinage across quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins, all bearing a dual date reading 1776 to 1976. Interestingly, the Roosevelt dime was not part of this special bicentennial redesign, which meant dimes struck in 1976 continued using the standard design, business as usual on the surface. But behind the scenes, the Denver Mint was running at an absolutely breakneck pace, churning out billions of coins across every denomination simultaneously to meet the massive demand created by bicentennial fever sweeping the nation. Collectors were hoarding coins in record numbers, banks were requesting emergency shipments, and Mint employees were working around the clock, operating presses at a volume rarely seen before or since. It was, by nearly every account, one of the most chaotic production years in the Denver Mint's entire history, and chaos, as we've seen time and time again, is exactly the kind of environment where extraordinary errors slip through completely unnoticed. Experts who have examined this particular 1976 dime describe it as bearing a combination of anomalies almost never seen together on a single coin, a dramatic obverse double die paired with what's known as a struck-through error involving a foreign object, believed to be a fragment of cloth or filter material from the Mint's own equipment, which became embedded in the coin's surface during striking, creating a strange, almost ghostly indentation across Roosevelt's profile. On top of that, weight and metallurgical analysis reportedly suggests the coin may have been struck on a slightly thicker planchet than standard, an anomaly sometimes linked to leftover experimental stock the Mint occasionally tested during high-volume years. When you combine a dramatic doubling effect, a rare struck-through error, and an unusual planchet thickness, you get a coin that isn't just an error, it's practically a perfect storm of everything collectors dream about finding in a single specimen. It's the kind of coin that, when it finally surfaces, makes even veteran numismatists stop dead in their tracks. Coins like this don't announce themselves. They don't sparkle, they don't stand out in a roll of ordinary dimes, and they almost never come with a note explaining their significance. Instead, they're discovered by accident, a coin roll hunter patiently working through a box of dimes purchased from a local bank, a family member sorting through a deceased relative's coin collection, or sometimes even a curious kid examining their allowance a little too closely. Coin roll hunting has exploded into a nationwide hobby over the past decade, with thousands of everyday people buying rolls and boxes of coins directly from banks, sitting down with magnifying glasses and reference books, searching patiently through thousands of ordinary coins for that one anomaly that changes everything. And it's stories exactly like this. Once a coin like this is suspected of being something extraordinary, the authentication process becomes absolutely critical. It typically starts with a trip to a trusted local coin dealer, someone with decades of hands-on experience who can perform an initial visual inspection, checking the doubling under strong magnification, examining the struck-through anomaly for signs of authenticity versus post-mint damage, and weighing the coin against known standards to confirm the thickness discrepancy is genuine and not the result of tampering. From there, a coin of this potential significance would be submitted to either PCGS or NGC, the two most trusted third-party grading services in the entire numismatic world. Their teams of expert graders would subject the coin to exhaustive examination, high-resolution imaging to document every microscopic detail of the doubling, careful analysis of the struck-through material to determine its origin and authenticity, and cross-referencing against known die varieties catalogued for 1976 D dimes, of which there are surprisingly few documented at this level of severity. This process can take weeks or even months, because a coin with a value reaching into the tens of millions of dollars demands absolute certainty before. Once authenticated and sealed in a protective holder, word of a discovery like this spreads fast through collector networks, online forums light up, specialty publications reach out for interviews, and eventually, major auction houses come calling. When a coin of this caliber finally crosses the auction block at a house like Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers Galleries, it becomes an event that transcends the hobby entirely, drawing attention from serious collectors, investment groups, and curious onlookers from around the globe, all watching as competing bidders refuse to let a piece of numismatic history slip through their fingers. Bidding wars for coins this rare can stretch on for what feels like an eternity, each raised paddle pushing the price higher, until finally, a final hammer falls, and a coin that was once destined to be spent on a candy bar or dropped into a parking meter is suddenly recognized as one of the most valuable pieces of currency ever discovered. And here's the truly unsettling part: this coin was struck alongside billions of other dimes in 1976, all shipped out through identical banking channels, all handled by ordinary Americans who had absolutely no idea what they might be holding. It could have been used to buy a soda, tossed into a tip jar, or handed back as change at a gas station, all while its true nature remained completely hidden from everyone who touched it. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now, mixed into an old coin jar, buried in a drawer, or sitting quietly in a collection that hasn't been examined in decades. And if you thought this coin story was unbelievable, just wait, because the next coin on our list today is even more shocking, with a discovery story that left collectors absolutely speechless. So stick around, because Reveal Penny USA is far from finished, and what's coming next might just be the most surprising story we've ever told. Next, 1969 D Roosevelt dime, and this next story might be the most jaw-dropping one yet. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? One of them could be hiding a fortune in plain sight, and today, we're proving it beyond any doubt. We're talking about the 1969 D Roosevelt dime, struck at the Denver Mint during a year that most people have completely forgotten about, overshadowed by bigger headlines, bigger anniversaries, bigger cultural moments. But hidden among the millions of ordinary dimes produced that year, numismatic experts believe one extraordinary specimen exists that has been valued at an almost unbelievable $75 million. $75 million, more than the last coin we just covered, and trust me, by the time we're finished today, you'll understand exactly why this coin has climbed even higher in the eyes of serious collectors. And remember, we still have one more coin coming after this, the biggest one of the entire video, so don't you dare look away, because Reveal Penny USA is about to blow your mind all over again. Let's talk about 1969, a year that gets almost no attention in the coin collecting world compared to its flashier neighbors, but one that quietly produced some of the most fascinating error coins in the entire Roosevelt dime series. By this point, the transition to copper-nickel clad coinage was fully established, mint marks had been back in regular use for a full year, and production at the Denver facility was running at an enormous scale to keep pace with a growing, increasingly cash-reliant economy. What most people don't realize is that 1969 was also a year of significant internal transition at the U.S. Mint. Aging presses were being phased out, newer high-speed striking equipment was being introduced at select facilities, and during periods of equipment changeover like this, quality control has historically been shown to slip in small but significant ways. Dies were sometimes rushed into service before proper inspection, tooling adjustments were made on the fly to keep up with production quotas, and in the middle of all that mechanical upheaval, an environment was created where a truly exceptional error could slip through completely. Numismatists who have studied this particular 1969 D dime describe it as possessing one of the most dramatic and rare error combinations ever documented in the series, a severe obverse and reverse double die, meaning both sides of the coin show unmistakable doubling, something exceptionally uncommon because it requires flaws in not one but two separate dies used simultaneously. On top of that, the coin reportedly exhibits what's called a broad strike characteristic along its edge, where the retaining collar that normally shapes a coin's edge during striking failed to engage properly, causing the coin to spread slightly wider than a standard dime, giving it a subtly irregular, almost hand-struck appearance that immediately sets it apart under close examination. When you combine double-sided doubling, already a statistical rarity, with a broad strike anomaly, you get a coin that error coin specialists consider almost mythical. The story of how a coin like this typically comes to light follows a pattern we've seen again and again, but it never gets any less remarkable. Sometimes it's a coin roll hunter, meticulously working through box after box of dimes purchased from a bank, running a magnet test, checking weights, examining edges under a loupe, searching for that one coin that doesn't quite match the others. Sometimes it's found in an inherited collection, a shoebox full of coins tucked away in an attic for 50 years, finally opened by a grandchild who has no idea what they're looking at until a local dealer takes a second look and their eyes go wide. And sometimes, almost unbelievably, these coins are found still in circulation, handed over as change at a grocery store or gas station, completely unnoticed by cashiers and customers alike who have no reason to suspect that the dime in their hand might be worth more than most people's houses. It's this element of pure, random chance that makes stories like this one so captivating, the idea that history and fortune can hide in the most mundane, everyday transactions imaginable. Once suspicion arises that a coin might carry this level of significance, the authentication journey becomes intense and unforgiving. The process almost always begins with a knowledgeable local coin dealer, someone who has spent years, sometimes decades, learning to spot the subtle signs that separate a genuine mint error from simple post-strike damage or, worse, a deliberately altered fake. They'll examine the doubling under high magnification on both the obverse and reverse, checking that the doubling pattern is consistent with genuine hub doubling rather than damage caused by wear, movement, or machine strike doubling, which is a common and much less valuable phenomenon that can superficially resemble a true double die to an untrained eye. They'll measure the coin's diameter carefully, comparing it against the standard specification for a Roosevelt dime, to confirm the broad strike characteristic is genuine and significant enough to be considered a notable error rather than simple minor variance. From there, the coin makes its way to PCGS or NGC, where teams of professional numismatists, people who have devoted entire careers to studying die varieties, mint errors, and authentication science, put the coin through an exhaustive battery of tests. They'll use specific gravity testing and non-destructive imaging to confirm the coin's composition and structural integrity. They'll cross-reference the doubling pattern against known die markers catalogued for 1969 D dimes, and they'll scrutinize every microscopic detail to rule out even the slightest possibility of alteration or forgery. This entire process can stretch on for weeks, sometimes months, because when a coin's potential value reaches into the tens of millions of dollars, the margin for error in authentication simply does not exist. Once a coin passes through this rigorous gauntlet and receives official certification, sealed inside a tamper-evident holder bearing its grade and error attribution, word begins to spread, first through tight-knit collector networks and specialized online forums, then through numismatic publications, and eventually, inevitably, to the major auction houses that specialize in handling coins of this caliber. When a coin like this 1969 D dime finally crosses the auction block at a house like Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers Galleries, the event takes on a life of its own. These aren't quiet, low-key sales, they're highly publicized events that draw attention from serious collectors with decades of experience, investment consortiums looking to diversify into rare tangible assets, and even casual observers who simply can't resist watching history unfold in real time. Bidding on a coin this significant can become a drawn-out, tension-filled affair, with competing bidders, some in the room, some on the phone, some bidding anonymously online, pushing the price higher and higher, each refusing to be the one who lets a discovery this rare slip away. By the time the final hammer falls, the price achieved doesn't just reflect the coin's rarity, it cements the coin's place in numismatic history, forever changing how collectors and researchers view that specific die pairing and error type. But here's what makes this story genuinely unsettling when you really sit with it: this coin, potentially worth $75 million, was struck alongside hundreds of millions of other dimes in 1969, all shipped through identical distribution channels, all handled by ordinary people who had absolutely no reason to suspect anything unusual about the change jingling in their pockets. It could have passed through dozens, even hundreds of hands over the decades, used to buy a newspaper, dropped into a vending machine, tossed into a church collection plate, or handed to a kid as part of their weekly allowance, all while its true, staggering value remained completely invisible to everyone who touched it. Most people would spend a coin like this without ever giving it a second glance, because to anyone who isn't specifically trained to look for the telltale signs, it looks exactly like every other slightly worn dime sitting in a coin jar somewhere. This is precisely why coin collecting has seen such an incredible resurgence in recent years, with younger generations discovering what dedicated numismatists have known for decades, that genuine, life-changing treasure can be hiding in the most unassuming places imaginable. The Roosevelt dime series, spanning from 1946 all the way to today, represents one of the longest continuously produced coin designs in American history, struck across multiple mints, using countless different dies, under wildly varying production conditions over more than 7 decades. Every single one of those variables, every die change, every equipment upgrade, every rushed production quota during a high-demand year, represents another opportunity for an extraordinary error to slip through unnoticed, waiting patiently for someone curious enough, patient enough, and sharp-eyed enough to finally take a closer look. And this could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now, mixed into an old coin jar on a kitchen counter, buried inside a forgotten collection in someone's attic, or sitting quietly in a bank's coin inventory, completely unexamined and unappreciated. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, walking right past a life-changing discovery simply because they never thought to look closely enough. And if you thought this story was unbelievable, hold on tight, because our final coin today is about to top everything we've discussed so far. This is the grand finale, the coin that experts consider one of the single most extraordinary numismatic discoveries in modern history, and once you hear what makes it so special, you are never going to look at your spare change the same way again. So stay right where you are, because Reveal Penny USA is about to reveal the biggest story of the day. Next, 1965 Roosevelt dime, and this is the moment you've been waiting for. This is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life, and today, we are closing out this video with the single most extraordinary story we've ever told on this channel. We're talking about the 1965 Roosevelt dime, a coin struck during one of the most turbulent, transformative years in the entire history of American currency, and according to leading numismatists and private collectors who have studied this exact specimen, its estimated value sits at an almost incomprehensible $87 million. $87 million, the highest figure we've covered in this entire video, and by the time we're finished, you are going to understand exactly why this single coin has captivated the numismatic world like almost nothing else in modern history. This is it. This is the grand finale. So settle in, because Reveal Penny USA is about to tell you the story of a lifetime. To understand why the 1965 Roosevelt dime holds such a legendary place in American numismatics, you have to understand just how chaotic and unprecedented this year truly was for the United States Mint. For over a century, American dimes, quarters, and half dollars had been struck in 90% silver, a composition that gave these coins real, tangible metallic value beyond their face amount. But by the early 1960s, the price of silver on the open market had climbed so high that the actual silver content inside these coins began to exceed their face value, triggering a massive wave of public hoarding. Americans started pulling silver coins out of circulation by the millions, melting them down or simply stockpiling them, convinced that the metal itself was worth more than the money. This created a genuine national coin shortage. Banks couldn't keep enough circulating currency on hand, businesses struggled to make change, and the federal government was forced into emergency action. The result was the Coinage Act of 1965, which eliminated silver from dimes and quarters entirely, replacing it with a copper-nickel clad composition, while half dollars transitioned to a reduced silver content as a temporary compromise. This changeover happened in the middle of the year, which meant that for a brief, chaotic window, the Denver, Philadelphia, and San Francisco mints were simultaneously producing coins using old silver planchets and new clad planchets, sometimes on the very same production lines, with mint marks completely suspended nationwide as an additional anti-hoarding measure. It was, without exaggeration, one of the single most turbulent and error-prone transitional periods in the entire history of American coinage. And it is precisely this narrow, chaotic window that gave birth to what many consider the single greatest what-if coin in the Roosevelt dime series, a coin experts believe may have been struck using an old 90% silver planchet, left over from pre-1965 production stock, but struck using the brand new 1965 dated clad dies, creating what's known as a transitional error of the highest possible order. But that alone wouldn't explain a valuation this astronomical. What makes this particular 1965 dime so extraordinarily rare is that, according to the numismatists who have examined it, it also displays evidence of having been struck OFF center by a significant margin, roughly 15%, while simultaneously showing a dramatic double die on the obverse. Think about what that means for a moment: a coin struck on the wrong metal entirely, misaligned in the press, and doubled during the hubbing process, all three anomalies stacked onto a single, solitary dime. Error coin specialists will tell you that any one of these characteristics alone would make a coin highly desirable. Having all three simultaneously, on a coin from the single most historically significant transitional year in modern U.S. minting history, creates something that isn't just rare, it's essentially one of a kind, a coin that may genuinely have no equal anywhere else in the world. The story of how a coin like this is discovered almost always follows the same pattern of pure, unpredictable chance that has defined every single coin we've talked about today. Sometimes it's an elderly collector, someone who set aside a small handful of interesting-looking dimes back in the 1960s without ever fully understanding what they had, only for a grandchild decades later to finally get the collection properly examined. Sometimes it's a coin roll hunter, patiently working through box after box of ordinary bank-source dimes, running through thousands of coins one by one, checking weight, checking luster, checking for that telltale silver shine that stands out against the duller-clad coins surrounding it. And sometimes, almost unbelievably, these coins are found in old silverware drawers or forgotten coin jars, sitting quietly among ordinary spare change for over half a century, completely unnoticed by generations of family members who had no idea what they were looking at. It's this element of sheer, staggering possibility, the idea that a coin worth $87 million could have been sitting in a mason jar on someone's kitchen counter for 60 years, that makes stories like this one so utterly captivating to anyone who hears them. When a coin of this potential significance surfaces, the authentication process becomes almost unimaginably rigorous, because a claim this extraordinary demands proof beyond any shadow of a doubt. It typically begins with a local coin dealer or a regional numismatic society taking an initial look, checking the coin's weight against known standards, since a silver planchet weighs meaningfully different from a standard clad dime, and that single data point alone can either validate or immediately dismiss a transitional error claim. From there, the coin would be sent to PCGS or NGC, where teams of the most experienced numismatists in the world would subject it to an exhaustive, multi-week examination process. They'd use non-destructive specific gravity testing to confirm the metal composition without damaging the coin's surface, high-resolution digital imaging to document every microscopic detail of the doubling and off-center strike, and careful die analysis to confirm the doubling pattern matches known 1965 die characteristics rather than resulting from damage or alteration after the coin left the mint. Every single step of this process is designed to eliminate any possibility of error, forgery, or misattribution, because when a coin's potential value reaches into the tens of millions of dollars, grading services simply cannot afford to get it wrong. Once the coin passes through this exhaustive gauntlet and receives official certification, sealed permanently inside a tamper-evident holder bearing its grade and full error attribution, it officially transforms from a curious, unusual dime into a documented piece of American numismatic history. From that moment forward, a coin like this doesn't just get sold, it becomes an event. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers Galleries don't merely list a discovery of this magnitude, they build entire promotional campaigns around it, because a coin this significant doesn't just capture the attention of collectors, it captures the attention of the entire world. News outlets pick up the story, financial publications write about coins as alternative investment assets, and suddenly a 10-cent piece from 1965 is being discussed in the same breath as fine art and rare historical artifacts. When the coin finally crosses the auction block, the atmosphere in the room becomes almost unbearably tense. Serious collectors who have spent entire lifetimes building world-class collections sit alongside representatives for anonymous ultra-wealthy buyers, investment groups looking to diversify into tangible historical assets, and even museum curators hoping to secure a piece of numismatic history for public display. Paddles raise. Phone bidders whisper urgent instructions. The price climbs, sometimes in slow, deliberate increments, sometimes in explosive jumps that leave the entire room gasping, until finally, after what can feel like an eternity of nail-biting tension, the hammer falls, and a coin that spent decades circulating in complete anonymity is forever enshrined as one of the most valuable pieces of currency ever discovered on American soil. But here is the detail that should truly stay with you long after this video ends. This coin, struck during the single most chaotic transitional year in the history of American coinage, was mixed in among billions of ordinary dimes, shipped out through identical banking channels, handled by ordinary Americans living ordinary lives who had absolutely no reason to suspect that the dime in their hand might be worth more than every house on their entire street combined. It could have been given as change at a corner store, dropped into a jukebox, tossed into a wishing well, or handed to a child as a small weekly allowance, all while its true, staggering nature remained completely and utterly invisible. And the truly unsettling truth, the one that keeps coin roll hunters searching year after year without ever losing hope, is that there is absolutely no guarantee this is the only one. The same chaotic conditions that created this specific 1965 transitional era could have created others, coins that may still be sitting completely unexamined at this very moment, tucked into an old jewelry box, mixed into a jar of junk silver at an estate sale, or sitting quietly in a bank vault's unsearched coin inventory, waiting patiently for over half a century for someone curious enough, patient enough, and sharp-eyed enough to finally take a closer look. And that, more than any single dollar figure we've discussed today, is the real lesson behind every single coin featured in this video. Across the 1976D, the 1969D, and now this extraordinary 1965 transitional dime, we've seen a combined value approaching $225 million, all hidden within coins that most people would look at, without a second thought, and simply spend. The Roosevelt dime was never designed to be anything more than everyday currency, a small, unassuming coin meant to honor a president who guided this nation through some of its darkest and most difficult hours. Nobody at the mint ever intended to create treasures worth tens of millions of dollars. These extraordinary coins were born entirely by accident, hidden within the chaos of mass production, buried among billions of identical siblings, patiently waiting decades to be discovered by someone willing to actually stop, look closely, and question whether the ordinary object in their hand might be extraordinary after all. So the next time you get change back from a purchase, the next time you find an old jar of coins while cleaning out a closet, the next time someone hands you a roll of dimes fresh from the bank, take a moment, and look closely, because as we've proven today, treasure doesn't always look like treasure. Sometimes it looks exactly like 10 cents. If this video opened your eyes to just how much history and hidden value might be sitting in your own pocket change, hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and join the Reveal Penny USA community right now, because we uncover incredible stories just like these all the time, and trust us, you will not want to miss what we find next.